In Age of Empires Mobile, every single day, one of you guys asks me an important question to do with your formations, which is simply, which of the different mercenary units should you unlock, right? This could be from the Swordsman, this could be from the Pikeman, Cavalry, or Archers, because in-game, you have 3 different options, and some of you guys don't know the difference or the benefits of each of them. And I thought, why not just explain that in today's video, because you're going to learn that each of these generally fit and tailor towards a different playstyle that you might like. And some of these mercenaries actually are specifically for certain setups. And I'm going to hopefully explain all that in today's video. If you've got any questions, put them down in a comment. I'll be happy to help. And if you want to support the channel a little bit further, smash like, comment, and subscribe. And let's just dive into today's video, right? So, mercenaries. What are they? If you're watching this video, you're probably, what the fuck am I talking about? Don't worry, you might have not unlocked them yet. You need to get to Town Center 26 minimum in order to start getting them unlocked. So at Town Center 26 development, you can see you're going to unlock the castle and the mercenary camp. And this is where it's down to you to do certain events in-game, including the exploration events in-game, to earn technique points and basically complete your castle facilities. And the thing is, you're going to be using your castle facilities for your mercenary contracts. This is going to be the first 2 things that you ever do, mercenary camp 1 and 2, because you're normally running 2 formations in the game. And with those 2 contracts, you're going to come over to your good old mercenary camp that you've built and hire some mercenaries. These mercenaries on a base level have an offensive passive and they have a defensive passive. So they come with 2 extra abilities that empower your troop. But also, when you have a mercenary equipped, you will also have any of the mercenary tech research also added on. So just for an example, because I'll have a mercenary cavalry unit equipped, I'm also going to get a bonus of 8% damage. Here, I'm going to get a bonus of 5% health, 10% defense. You got attack 10%. We got counter damage taken 8%, and then even the bonus of 4% overall damage. So you can see if I have a mercenary equipped, I have all of those bonuses, including any in the stage 2 equipped, on top of that unit, and that's going onto your formation to make them stronger. So generally, if you fight someone who doesn't have any mercenaries unlocked, you should beat them generally 9 times out of 10, I'm going to say, right? So with that, what is the difference between each of the types of mercenaries? Well, let me start up with the Swordsman, because I think once I go through the Swordsman, you're going to see a very similar pattern for each of the others. And then afterwards, I will tell you what units or formations I would recommend for each of these types of mercs. So when it comes to infantry, each merc is for a different type of play style. Japanese samurai, it's all about consistency. So if you're a guy that likes consistent combat, you want consistent results, right, over a long period of fighting, Japanese samurai is the way to go. They're going to increase your activation chance of all the heroes in the troop on their secondary strike and active skills by 1%, while at the same time, no matter what, you also reduce all damage taken by the troop by 2%. As you can see, this is specifically saying secondary strike and active skills, meaning if you're using Miyamoto, Ramses, Lagertha, Yodit, Pyrrhus, it doesn't matter who you're using, each one of those type of units is going to be happy with them. If you're a martial swordsman unit, as it's recommending here, you do not need these. Why? Well, you're a martial person, and as you must know, martials have turn-based skills, and when you read the turn-based skill, it's a guarantee to be activated between certain intervals, meaning you have a 100% chance. So having a 101% chance isn't gonna help you anymore, right? So for martial swordsmen, you don't need Japanese samurai. It's generally everyone else that needs it that has these other skills. Then we have the throwing axemen from France. These guys are really cool. I love them. I think they're really badass looking, as you can see with the animation too. Like, pulling it out of him. I love it. But the Mercenary of the French Axeman is all about scaling. It's the scaling unit in the game. Meaning, anytime you deal signature skill damage with any of the units that you're going to be equipping it to, their might and strategy is increased by 1.5 for 6 seconds, and it can stack up to 4.5. So if you do 3 instances of damage within that 6 seconds, as you guessed it, it's gonna go up. So you can do 1 instance of damage, wait 4 seconds, do another instance of damage, you could wait 5 seconds, you could do another instance of damage, and you're at max stacks. Just an example there. And being at max stacks means you're gonna have, as you guessed it, scaled your stats higher to hopefully deal more damage to the enemies, right? Then you've also got the Persian Immortals. The Persian Immortals are basically the jack of all trade, master of none, and they can't fail you, right? They are the flex pick of the Swordsman. All heroes within the troop increases their skill damage by 2%. And on top of this, after your troop deals skill damage, you reduce all damage taken by your troops by 3.5%. So you can kind of see how each one of these units, especially for their offensive ability, work a little bit different. Generally, when it comes to the defense ability of these, so we got reduce all damage taken by 2%, they are very similar, but some are better than the others. And again, could be down to what you want. The French Thrown Axeman does all might damage taken by the troop by 4%. So again, really good if you're trying to counter, if you're like a Ramses player or a Pyrrhus player, and you're, or Sun Tzu, for example, and you're trying to reduce the damage taken from, I don't know, a Miyamoto, or Yoda, Lubu, you know, Cyrus, we can keep going, right? It's going to help you get effectively a better trade in that, right? But what you'll notice there, as I've gone through that explanation, most of all of the types of swordsman units in the game can use each one of them. Which one is the best one? I know you guys are going to ask. I personally haven't done enough mercenary testing to do that. But I might start doing that over the next couple of weeks and actually get some really good data and figure out which one actually performs the highest. However, I'm going to tell you, most times out of 10, the mercenary unit is doing just a little bit. It's not going to make it a win or lose situation. Do you get what I mean? It's just like that little bit of sprinkle on top for most of the time for your formation. It's just a nice thing to have. So when it comes to this, all I'm going to tell you straight away for the swordsman ones is if you are a warrior swordsman player, honestly, you can use all 3. What I would prefer to use is the Japanese samurai at first in order to get the activation chance. If you feel like you've got enough activation chance, my next best one is France. This is only because even if you're running Miyamoto and Lagertha and they keep hopscotching their abilities to each other, well, you're going to get this Rage and Cleave very, very high, very, very quickly. And guess what? You're going to be able to do more damage, right? So in those kind of situations, you can kind of see with your formation why certain ones might be a little bit better for you. But at the end of the day, it is a playstyle choice, right? Pikeman. Kind of very similar to what we've just said, but a little bit different too. Roman Centurions is the jack of all trades, master of none. So if you're always worried, you don't know what's the best thing to pick, Roman Centurions is the safest. You increase every type of pikeman, it doesn't matter. You increase all of their damage by 2% while you're using them. On top of this, whenever you deal damage, you're reducing damage taken by your troops for 3.5% for 3 seconds. So you can see if you're a warrior pikeman, a tactician pikeman, or even a martial pikeman, all of these effects here is, you love them. This is what you want to see. When we look at the Swiss are very heavily designed for generally 1 unit, even though 2 can use them. It says when dealing turn-based or passive damage, the troops ignore 2% of the enemy's defense. This is good, yes, for technically turn-based combat like the martial pikeman, but only having 2% defense penetration isn't good enough. When you compare that to something like Cyrus Cyrus's skill has a 20% damage mitigation, right? You have a 65% chance to ignore 20% of the enemy's defense. And when you make that 22%, it doesn't sound like too much of an increase, but you got to think, we're almost kind of climbing closely to 1/4. So a quarter of their stats, of their defense, we ignore. We don't care. We get to deal more damage. And I do think when it comes to the Pikeman especially, if you're a Cyrus player, I think Swiss Pikeman is the best thing to have, because also you get this reduced auto damage taken 2 for 2% all the way around, but it's kind of taking advantage of what Cyrus is already doing, which is mitigating defense. When we look at the Chinese Lishang wielders, these guys are really cool, but they're typically used for heavy martial setups, because obviously they release a turn-based skills. However, some Pikeman mains at the very highest level, and I mean highest level, 50 million, 60 million troop power. These are players at 150, 200 million power, right? They will use the Chinese Lijiang wielders on all Pikemen. This is because they value one thing only, and that's Mangler. Reducing active skill damage taken by 4% is absolutely huge for Pikemen, because that means, again, if you're against a Pyrrhus, a Miyamoto, a Ramses, King Arthur, you name it, you're reducing his damage output by 4%, which doesn't sound like much, but with all the other damage reduction effects that you have on top, this is massive. It just allows you to kind of stay out there a little bit longer. Would I recommend the Chinese Lishang wielders for every single Pikeman player? No. Would I recommend it for the very top of the top still? 100%. What I would recommend for most players, literally 9 times out of 10, is to have the Roman Centurions unlocked, because they literally work with every Pikeman in the game. It doesn't matter. That's what's so good about them. Apart from that, if you're a Cyrus player and you're a Cyrus main, as you probably guessed, I am going to say Swiss Pikeman is the best thing for you. It just makes the most sense. You want to try and tunnel vision into what your hero is already doing. From here, we've got the Cavalry. Cavalry are very similar to the Swordsman. And what I mean by that is, you've got the Camel Riders that are increasing the activation chance of skills, which is consistency, but he also reduced troop damage taken by 5% for the first 18 seconds, which is huge. So these guys make you very tanky and give you consistency. When we look at the Byzantine Cataphracts, these are your Jack of Trade, Master of None, meaning you can run this horse anywhere. You're increasing every single hero in the troop's skill damage by 2%, and whenever they deal skill damage, you reduce all that damage taken by 3.5. Then, when we look at the elephants, these are what I would consider the glass cannons. If you really, really want to roll the dice and have some very explosive combats, this is where the Indian battle elephants come in, because you give your heroes the 5% chance to launch 2 normal attacks. And as you guys know, for every time you launch a normal attack in a turn, as a Lubu player, as a Ian Belisarius player, for example, you get to launch a secondary strike skill potentially. So this is allowing you to have very, very high explosivity. And that's kind of how I want you to look at this. Elephants, super explosive, but super casino. Byzantine, Jack of all trades, Master of none. They can't let you down. Camel Riders increase the consistency, but make you super, super tanky. Which ones do I recommend? 9 times out of 10 now, I actually recommend Camel Riders. I think being tanky and having consistency is fantastic. The only time where you might want to use something like the Indian Battle Elephants is because you're running a Lubu Zhao Yun with that nasty, nasty Attila, right? To really force as many opportunities to enter the double attack state. And that's through Attila, Zhao, and the elephant to help your Lubu, right? So you can see there, each one of these ones, again, have their kind of place. Archers, very similar to before. So Korean archers are all about consistency. So we want to increase our activation chance of all of our heroes' secondary strike and active skills, meaning it helps Mulan, Bellevue, Alp Aslan, even Suleiman and St. Louis, and technically Confucius. So really, really good for those type of heroes. You also reduce all damage taken, which is nice and flat. When you go to the other two, British Longbowmen, these guys are your scaling heroes. So just like before with the French throwing axemen, British Longbowmen like to scale. So the longer they're in fight, the more damage they like to deal. On top of this, and one thing that I like, and I would recommend this as a tip and trick, with the British Longbowmen, they give you a 4% damage reduction against secondary strike damage, which doesn't seem like much, but you really need it because every single point you have of that reduces heroes like Lubu and Belisarius and vice versa, even El Cid, for example, all of their damage, and kind of hopes that even when you're killing that swordsman and you've got a cavalry on you in retaliation, you should be able to try and tank a little bit more than normal to deal damage. So again, really good tanking, good scaling. Egyptian chariots now, as you probably guessed, is the jack of all trade archer. So if you don't want to go down any of those routes and you just want a safe option and you know it's going to work no matter where you put it, anywhere in the game, this is where it is. Because you get 2% again, increased damage on all of your heroes in that troop, and after your troop deals skill damage, reduce all damage taken by your troop by 3.5%. So really, really good, depending on what you need for your formation, right? So you can see there, as I've gone through each of the 3 different mercenary units, each one honestly has its own playstyle. It really does. I can't tell you which is the best one, because in order to do the best one, I honestly think you need to do nearly like, I don't know, 100, 200, points of data of, seeing what the differences are between them. And what I think what people will notice is no matter what, it's going to be about 1-2%, if that, difference between each of these types. So at the end of the day, what I'm trying to, drive home here to you guys is don't stress about it. As long as you pick one that makes sense, you're going to be good. So just to help you guys, if you're a warrior swordsman player, you can pick any of these 3. It doesn't matter. I would prefer using samurai or the axeman, but that's me. And that's because I just prefer how these 2 work for warrior swordsman. If you're a martial swordsman player, even though I don't recommend it, you're going to be a Persian immortal player or a French throwing axeman player, because these are the only 2 that apply to you. If you're a tactician swordsman, again, all 3 can't be used. I would prefer using the French throwing axeman just because it really helps you defend against might-based users, and you're really good at scaling. So that's what I would do. We've already done the pikeman. If you're a warrior pikeman, Cyrus, it's a Swiss pikeman run. If you're a tactician, it's going to be Roman centurions or the Leishang wielders, depending if you just want that damage reduction. But I would normally go for Roman centurions. If you're a martial pikeman, it is literally any of the 3. But Chinese Leishang wielders are going to give you the lowest, again, damage reduction, well, the highest damage reduction, so you take the lowest amount of damage over the fight. So when it comes to here, it's very straightforward. Unfortunately, pikeman, you got done dirty. If you can't understand which one to go for as a pikeman player, I would hang it up. I'm going to be real. Cavalry, though, is where things are a little bit, you get what I mean? If you're a tactician cavalry player, I actually really like the camel riders for you guys, because you're always using secondary strike damage, and even with William, you've got active as well. But it's the fact that you're getting this 5% damage reduction in the first 18 seconds after entering battle. This can happen multiple times. It's not just one go. So if you fight someone and you beat them within that 18 seconds or after 18 seconds, and then you finish the fight, no one's targeting you, and then you target someone else, that's a brand new battle. You're entering a new fight, which is another 5%, which is really good uptime on there. And this is actually valid for, even as you guessed it, the warrior cavalry. So I think for the tactician cavalry, you can go camel riders or Byzantine cataphracts. If you are a warrior cavalry Lubu, I'd go for camel rider or Indian battle elephants, depending on your playstyle. I would recommend camel rider 9 times out of 10 though, just because of how good they are. And then if you're a martial boy, I would also go down either the camel rider or the Byzantine cataphracts. You'll notice what makes camel riders so good for cavs is the fact that you literally increase the activation chance for you all, but you get one thing that you lack, which is, you know, damage reduction. You get survivability in your formation. If you're running a Lubu march with Attila exclusively, so, you know, Zhao, Lubu, Attila, if that's your setup, I would run battle elephants, just because it gives you as many opportunities to give Lubu 2 chances to fucking go crazy, and that is it. Same with, obviously, your Zhao, he can do the same thing, but yeah, this is the main thing that you want to do, just again, go, you know, super crazy, super explosive within cavalry. Archers, which is my main, used to be my main, should we say, is actually straightforward. I would tell every single archer player one of 2 things. If you are looking to try and survive and do as much damage as possible, I honestly think the British Longbowman is the #1 archer unit in the game. The fact that you scale damage is fantastic, and the fact that you reduce damage taken from all of the types of cavalry units is absolutely fantastic too. However, if you are running a control, so tactician archer march, Suleiman, St. Louis, you know, the Queen Sendiok, all of those type of units, the Korean archers is actually the best thing to use, because you really, really need those skills to go off. Because if those skills go off, that's what's making your control march actually do damage, and more importantly, impact the battlefield. So Korean archers, if you're a tactician archer player, I would recommend 10 out of 10 times. I don't care. Yes, they're not there to deal more damage, but that's not their job. Their job is to control. So it is honestly, sadly, that simple. Honestly, it is that simple. Even when it comes to martial archers, British Longbowmen. Warrior archers, British Longbowmen. They're just that good for them. They're almost like the camels of the cavalry tree, right? So hopefully from this video, even though I've gone through it quite quick, and I do apologize, but hopefully you should understand the different play styles of each one of these different units, because each one of these different units has pros and cons. They're all good. They're not all bad by any means, but you'll notice they are sometimes tailored to specific formations. And if you guys have got any questions, or you need to ask what mercenary you want on your formation, comment down below on this video, because this video will be the place for you, right? And it should hopefully teach you everything that you need to know about the basics, the differences, and my opinion on where you should be using these mercenaries in the formations. And if it has, smash like, comment, and subscribe. And until the next one, stay safe, stay sneaky. Peace out.